Hi, everyone. Welcome to Confidently Be You. My name is Jennifer Shlomovich, and today I will be discussing managing medical challenges while being a working mother with my special guest, Metha Vasquez. Metha is an executive search consultant and executive coach with a 20-year background as a human resources executive in a variety of industries and global roles. Holding director and vice president roles in Fortune 500, world-class organizations, and startup firms, Metha's areas of expertise include talent acquisition and talent development across diverse cultures and backgrounds. Metha has traveled for business and pleasure to 6 continents and over 35 countries. She has served on for-profit and nonprofit boards, dedicating much of the last 20 years to helping others in the community. Metha graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Hotel and Restaurant Management from the University of Houston. She obtained her master's degree in business from Keller Graduate School of Management of DeVry University. She holds 2 national human resources certifications, SPHR and SHRM-SCP, and 1 international human resources certification, a GPHR. She is a trained executive coach from the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. Metha resides in Texas Hill Country with her husband and son. Her passion is assisting organizations and individuals in meeting and exceeding their mission and professional goals. Her focus in coaching is inspiring working professionals to be set and meet challenging goals. She has an innate ability to help those facing challenging obstacles to get to the root of their situations and move forward. Metha currently serves on the board of Austin SHRM and local chapter of the Society for Human Resources, assisting the community in reemployment and skill development initiatives. That's a lot of impressive stuff.
Well, thank you.
And welcome. It's nice to have you here.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's just really nice watching your videos and seeing the inspiring people that you have come on. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And I thank you for being one of those inspiring people. So before we jump into our topic, what inspired you to get into the work that you do?
Well, I think it started at a really young age. I grew up in a pretty rough home. One of my parents was a very severe alcoholic. And while it's not a great story about, the skills that I learned, but I think that I really wanted to overcome the obstacles that I had and try to do everything I could to become better. So somehow that came up in my DNA to help other people. Doesn't have to be my kind of situation that they had, but people that are just passionate about wanting to make themselves better. So for the last 20 years, I have been in HR roles and now own my own company, but really just helping professionals, working professionals, meet whatever goals that they have and overcome their challenges just by helping them make a plan and supporting them. I'm just looking at my notes. And also from my background, and this is growing up in an alcoholic home, you learn the skill of reading people, which I have to do all the time, whether I'm recruiting or whether I'm, being a coach, is really understanding people and reading them really well. So that's where my passion lies. It's just listening all day long. Even now that we're on video and it's not as much face to face, I still get that joy of listening to their story, their situation, and what their goals are. And I get my charge by just, helping them make a plan and work towards that, getting better employment or making a personal goal. And that's what I get up and do every day.
That's great. And that's such a powerful skill because when you really take the time to listen to people and read them, you're able to meet them where they're really at. And you're able to sometimes you're able to hear what's beyond what they're saying. And that's part of that coaching skills too, is there's what they're saying, and then there's really what's behind that and helping them discover that for themselves. Because when they're able to get to the root of something, then they can really create that big sustainable change.
Yeah, what I, didn't even mention that I'm a working mother as well, and all those skills come out. You need them as a working mother or a parent as
Yeah.
well. And I used to joke all the time with my teams when I manage teams is that, you know, great leaders also usually come from being working parents because they're practicing those skills at home and they're practicing that work, whether it's reading people or helping your children achieve their goals. So it kind of just reinforces it all day long. So I like that.
Absolutely. Not to mention the multitasking.
That's a great skill that you pick up too. It applies at home and at work.
Yes, absolutely. So, what experience do you have managing medical challenges while being a working mom?
Well, I have managed a lot. We have three children. Currently, they're 24, 23, and 17.
Mhm.
Our oldest child, a daughter, was born with a kidney issue where her kidneys do not produce a vitamin that is needed to make your bone strong. And it wasn't until she was about, I don't know, 12 to 18 months that we realized that her legs started bowing.
Hmm.
And so we had to really go to a lot of specialists and figure out what was going on with her. And so this is a chronic, lifelong condition where her legs are still bowed, even though we've had many surgeries to straighten them. She has severe pain and she will her whole life, and she's a short person. So I've had my daughter. Then we have a middle daughter that's been healthy, yay. And then we have a son that's 17, almost 18. And he was born with over half his brain missing. So I would call that a pretty severe medical challenge. But we didn't know that at his time of birth. We didn't know it, while I was pregnant. Until he started missing his developmental milestones. There's some things at first when he was born that we knew about, but we didn't know the severity until, he was missing his milestones. So he's very disabled. His major category of classification is cerebral palsy, but
Mhm.
he's considered a child of multiple disabilities. So he can't walk, talk, sit up. He doesn't have any motor control. He has epilepsy. He's blind. And
Mhm.
then he has a host of other downstream issues. He's the developmental age of a 6-month old. So he's on a feeding tube and he needs round the clock care. So, I mean, yes, all of that is kind of, it's a lot. And I've always been a working mother, and actually, we've been a two-parent household that's been working. So I've been managing those conditions all of their life and working full time. But as you joked earlier, I did learn a lot of skills. I learned how to prioritize. I learned how to research like I never knew I would have to research. Negotiation skills, and we're going to talk about that later when I talk about meeting with doctors, advocacy, and effective communication. And I did that all in the bounds of trying to keep my children as healthy as possible.
Wow. First of all, wow, that's a lot. And you have such a positive, upbeat personality that that's a lot just to have, one child with so much happening, but to have two children dealing with very severe things. And you've been able to step up to the plate and manage all of that while also managing a career that sounds very, like he's been very busy as well with a lot of different things. But you see you have found the value in all of these different challenges and how it's given you so many skills and resiliency too. And so to be able to navigate these things at home and navigate, the things that go on at work, and because you've had all these varied experiences, it sounds like that's really allowed you to help support people through all types of situations.
Yeah, I think so. I think I would say that 25 years ago, I didn't have the level of empathy I have now,
Hmm.
but there's so many avenues by which my empathy has grown, whether it's been through my a busy schedule. You meet somebody else and have a busy schedule, or you meet somebody that has some kind of chronic condition, whether it's their own or their child's, or just compassion, and so yes, I think it has really taught me. It has also told me, and I think I told you that my son is blind, so I
Yeah.
have told you that I have this kind of keen sense of reading people from growing up in an alcoholic home. But my son being blind has also really allowed me to improve my reading skills of others, because he cannot communicate to me. So you
Mm.
have to kind of read his cues and on how he's talking to you. So yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that I have a positive attitude, but you are right. I could not have done the things that I've done by, sitting back and letting life take over.
Yeah, and life can take over no matter what your situation is. We all have stuff, and I've had different challenges. I went through a divorce years ago, and I've been a single mom, and then I got remarried, and then I've done the blended family stuff. Different different set of challenges, but still it's a lot when you're navigating different changes in your household and managing different things with your children, and then creating new environments and blending all these different things while also building your career and then all of those other things. And then I got my coaching certification like a couple years after I got remarried, and my son was at that time uh he was just starting middle school, so he was like in 6th grade when I got my certification. So I was able to attempt that. He was like mostly self-sufficient at that point.
Yeah.
But it was still a lot to navigate. Now he's 16, so now he's even more like on his own with things. But it's hard when you're a mom dealing with just regular parenting stuff, and then to have these additional challenges on top of it, and to be able to navigate all of those things while also managing a full-time career is certainly very courageous and commendable.
Well, thank you. But your story just proves that people have all types of circumstances. I had medical challenges that I was dealing with. You went through a divorce, and it sounds like you inherited children, and so that's where that empathy comes from, because everybody has their own story that they
Yeah.
have to work through. And that's really where I get inspired by people.
Absolutely. And that's why I have this channel, because I love when people share their stories. So I appreciate you sharing yours. So, what have been some of your biggest challenges? And I'm sure there's been many, but like, what are some really key challenges that you would like to talk about today?
Let's see. Okay, I put some notes here. One about how to navigate the healthcare system and
Mm.
insurance companies. So that's not like in a playbook anywhere. It says step by step. So, managing a primary care and specialist for both of my children
Mm.
was difficult, because you don't know what specialists you need until you go to the primary care doctor, and then you have consults with various specialists. So that was difficult. Also, learning how to navigate the insurance so that we don't go into a financial black hole. Really taking the time to understand that. So that was for both children. For my daughter, some of the biggest challenge is her level of pain. So yes, she has bow-leggedness, and so she's tired, she lacks energy. I mean, walking is a major life activity, and it is difficult for her, even though she can walk. But she faced an extreme amount of bullying in school
Mm.
because she had bowed legs, which eventually resulted in severe anxiety and depression. And so, one of the biggest challenges as she moved into adulthood, and you talked about your 16-year-old, is that when they turn 18, you lose full control, you lose all control to their medical records. That was another thing that I learned.
Oh,
You
wow.
lose access to everything. It does not matter that you're a parent, they turn everything off. So learning how to coach, an 18-year-old to make sure that they're going to therapy, they're going to their
Wow.
psychiatry visits, they're taking their medication, they're eating properly. That was one of the biggest challenges with her moving to adulthood, which that was not her original condition, but you can see all that bullying really made
Yeah.
that difficult for her. So that was one of the biggest challenges for my daughter. For my son, and this is the working mother part, was like navigating social services and balancing the amount of doctor's appointments. So he probably averages anywhere from 6 to 12 specialists. So it depends on where he is in his life and how he's doing. And so two working parents navigating all of that, communicating that with each other has been a challenge. I think with the school, while I've had numerous challenges with the school, I continue to have a challenge with people not understanding how to deal with a blind person that can't communicate with you.
Mm.
So every doctor's appointment, every appointment with a social worker, every new person that we deal with at school, we constantly have to tell them that he's blind and how to interact with them, because he can't communicate. And he is a person that when you look at him, you would never know that he's blind. He's just one of those people. So those are some of the kind of challenges that I've had, or but my husband and I both have had.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, those are some pretty big challenges, and it must be hard, being a mom, seeing your kids dealing with these things, and then especially like your daughter being bullied on top of already going through enough hardship. And it just goes to show that when people do pick on someone, you never know what someone's going through. You never know what that person has to deal with on the inside, at home, and it's a shame that that's something that still it's never gone away. And it's gotten worse with the social media. Like when I was in school, the internet was just starting to become a thing. It was very primitive. Like it was like AOL when I was like in high school. But you didn't have this cyberbullying that you have now. So it's like bullying has like upgraded in some ways, which is a shame. But it's and the tip that you shared about or when you mentioned about losing control of medical records at age 18, I had no idea about that. And that's certainly something that if you're a parent watching this and you're very involved with your child's medical conditions, that's something really important to, I guess, plan for. Like, how do you plan for something like that when that time comes?
Yeah, I mean, it was devastating because she got picked up by the police because she had a severe anxiety attack. So a friend called for her. She got in what they call like 48-hour held care. And because she was an adult, I couldn't see her. I couldn't speak to a doctor on her behalf.
Wow.
The police wouldn't talk to us. And that is terrifying as a parent.
Sure.
You've totally lost control. And at 18, they're such a young adult that they really don't know how to make all of those decisions. So that was really scary. I want to say also with the depression, when we finally got her out, and we found a really really good psychiatrist, which I'm going to talk to you about later about finding resources. But when she was really in a bad shape when I took her to this psychiatrist. And that was the first time I ever heard that she was bullied.
Mm.
And so she was 18, and I still get the chills. I was sitting in in that psychiatrist's office, and she's well renowned. She's so well renowned. And I'm just keeping my mouth shut. And she said I could attend as long as I kept my mouth shut. And my daughter is telling this story about how she's been bullied since she's like 8 years old, and she's 18. And I have never heard
Wow.
this. And I'm thinking, oh my God. I mean, you think about, you're like doing everything you can as a parent. And I'm like, this has caused her anxiety and depression. So I don't want to scare people, but I have learned so much. And I just told you how I thought I was great at reading people, and I didn't even know that my daughter was suffering
Wow.
from bullying to this degree.
Wow. Yeah, it's scary, but also, well, thank you again for sharing all of this because, again, these are all things that someone may not think about or realize is happening unless their child shares it with them. And it sounds like she did a good job keeping it from you.
She did. Yes, yes.
um, but and how's she doing now?
She's doing so well. And thank you for asking. I mean, I think that, and I'm going to tell a story later
Yeah.
about how I had to jump in and help her, but I think that she has learned a lot of tenacity,
Mhm.
and she has done so much self-reflection that she knows how to manage her condition. So,
Mhm.
and I hear stories from other parents where their children are going through anxiety or depression, and it is so difficult. But she has turned her life around and is very disciplined. So I thank you for asking. She's doing really well.
That's great to hear. I'm glad. I'm glad. It sounds like she takes after you because you're able to take things, right? And you were able to build this resilience and strength and it helped you grow and become aware of these different things. And it sounds like your daughter has done the same thing and she's turned her situations around too.
Well, yes, hopefully we're doing things right as a parent. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so, what would you say are some of your biggest successes with managing your children's conditions while also managing your career?
So I wrote down four,
Okay.
and it's great to reflect on these. But the first thing I put was my marriage.
Mm-hmm.
We've been married 27 years. And
Congrats.
so I put a positive and a negative. At times, it has been really challenging and stressful.
Sure.
Having very tough conversations about treatment strategies, of course, finances. When you have medical issues, you have financial issues as well. You have to balance, the finances. And then working, we don't always agree. That's the thing, is we have to have difficult conversations about how we don't agree about treatment options. But I think respect and patience has really played a key. Now, on the positive side, we are like a team like no other team,
Mm.
so we have relied on each other. We have jumped in for each other. There's days, and this as a busy working mom, that you have absolutely no ounce of energy left. So relied on each other. We've also allowed each other to have our own hobbies, which that gives you
Hmm.
some mind space away from work and from home. And we've also been a sounding board, like, am I losing my mind? That kind of thing. So I'm really appreciative of the life that we've created, but also the overall health and success of our children and our careers. So that's one thing. Second thing that I'm really proud of is that, like I just told you the story about my daughter, that really at this state, our children are doing well. And that's all that you can hope for. So even though my son has a lot of medical conditions, he enjoys every day. And, for the most part, he's not in the hospital. He's not like a sickly child. So we're very grateful that, we have, the moments that we have and that they're, they're thriving to the best that they can be. The other thing that I'm very proud of is that our ability to learn and seek information and be tenacious because, you as a working mother and as any parent will just fight like heck to get what's right for their child. They will really fight like heck. So I'm going to give you an example that, my son, as he's aging, he's getting more difficult situations. It's just like anybody's body that ages, you can come across more medical conditions. And so he has, we think, has been diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. So the issue with UC is there is no definitive diagnosis tool. So when the doctor says, I think you have UC, there is just not a test that tells you to have that. So we have had like a dozen tests, probably more than that. We've been on 5 courses of treatment. We don't really know what he has, but with this latest round, we just decided things were not working. So we've had probably 10 meetings with the doctor. And so I told my husband, like, look, I think I want to take the last 4 recommendations of the doctor and I'm going to do extensive research on the side effects, the clinical studies, and all of this. So we just really had a meeting on that just the other day. But I read so many clinical studies. I don't ever think I would have thought I would have to do that in my lifetime, but it was what was necessary because the former treatments weren't working. So just being really tenacious about learning. And then the last thing I have, which is the last thing, is our careers. So I am thankful for our careers because I do think that had we gotten sucked into the vortex of only focusing on our children's, medical conditions, that probably wouldn't have been healthy for us. So we both had successful careers. I'm not going to tell you, there have been crazy times, with us both working. But it's also been an outlet for us. And I do commend my husband because one of the jobs I had, where I told you I've been to like 35 countries, I had to travel a lot over a 4-year period. And I don't know how my husband did it, but he is a very patient man.
Well, first of all, kudos to both of you because, first of all, marriage is hard as it is when you don't have any other things happening there, additional challenges. There's just the basic challenges of marriage. So when you throw on things like this, it sounds like you both have found it strengthened you to be this like super team where you've been able to manage careers, you were able to travel. And I think it's so important what you mentioned about having hobbies, because that is so important to have. I realized that I got disconnected from all my hobbies because when I did my coaching certification and then creating my business, but also working a full-time job, it's like all my time became about family, work, business, this, and then feeling guilty if I did something fun for myself. And I realized I have to get back into doing fun things. So back in February, I bought a puzzle and I made myself do this puzzle. I have it framed, actually, got to hang it up. I'll show you at the end. I dumped this puzzle out on the table. I took up part of the table and it forced me, like sometimes it would take 30 minutes with my tea to work on it, 10 minutes. And it just forced me to like stop. And sometimes I got so sucked in, I would listen to a podcast and I'd be working on it. And the next thing you know, it was all put together. But it was just something for the sake of fun. That's where I'm getting at. And I started getting back into reading things just for the sake of fun. Because My whole life's been personal development books for a while. Between going through my own personal stuff, reading the personal development books, and then my coaching stuff and everything else. So it's so easy, no matter what's going on in your life, it's so easy to get disconnected from hobbies, but they're not a waste of time at all because they're so important for your mindset. If you don't feel fulfilled and happy, like if you feel like you can't have fun in life, it's going to have a ripple effect and get in the way of that productivity and all the other things that you want to accomplish. So I just wanted to circle back to what you said about hobbies because that is so very important to do, to have something for fun, because otherwise you can be the whole thing can be a sinking ship if you don't have some type of outlet for yourself.
Yeah. I really like your story about the puzzle because it sounds like it stimulated your brain, but it was also relaxing at the
It
same
really
time.
was. I'm going to grab it real quick. I'll just
Okay.
I have it framed.
That is so artsy. I
know.
it.
Thanks. I just now have to actually take the time and hang it up somewhere.
Yeah, actually, it'll go good in your office. It just
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. So and it's also an easy way to get artwork for your house. So
yeah, I always think of puzzles as like a map or like you
Yeah.
have to say. So that is so cool that it actually can function as art.
Yeah, you just throw some Mod Podge on top of it, let it dry, and then stick it in a frame. But yeah, so that's incredible how you were able to create all these successes, and it sounds like you created systems, and I can't imagine reading one medical study is an easy task. So to read a lot of medical studies must be a very daunting experience. But I love how you've taken all of these things that you've gone through and found a silver lining. It's given you skills that that you're able to take elsewhere and create value in other situations because you've had all these skills.
You know, and when you're doing them as a mother, you don't think like that, obviously, right? You would do like if your child was sick or had a crisis, you would do anything, figure it out. So, when I was doing that, I didn't think that way, but I'm glad you brought it up because I don't want it left unsaid that there are people struggling out there with their kids, issues, but they are learning things from that can be applied in life and in your career. It's not why I did it, and you don't think about it at the time, but yes, it has served me with a lot of skills. And until you reflect back on it, you don't realize it. You're in the middle of it, and that's all you can think about.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you have found your way through it all. And that's the thing too. It's finding your way because what might work for one person might not work for another person. But learning about different ways, you're able to weave that into what works for you.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing about my career and connecting with people is that you can share things, but hopefully it will inspire them to do things the way it will work for them. So, if you are a list person, then maybe that works for you. If you use, a computer to do it, it's just about, okay, there is a way to resolve it, but how we resolve it, it's different for each person.
Right. Absolutely. Same destination, but you could take a different path. It's like a map going someplace. You can take this route or this route or this route, as long as you end up at the same destination.
Yeah, and that's what's great about weaving it into my career is because with being a recruiter and also a coach, not everybody travels the same path. They just don't.
Yeah.
The path is what they make it.
Absolutely. That is very true. And so What are some tips? I mean, you've shared some tips already, but like, what are some tips that you would like to share with any other moms out there who are in a similar situation?
Okay, so I did write some notes too, and
Okay.
I hope this makes you laugh. In that you hear about the word balance, and I do not like that word because, and it's like a tagline that people use in HR. But when you are navigating your career, your marriage, your children, whatever hobbies you're dealing with, if you're involved in the church or community service or whatever, you have priorities. So things drop. That's just the way it is. So you have to really understand that things will drop. So my, advice is to give yourself credit for wanting to do the best you can for your children. I mean,
Mm.
that's the best. You just have to say, okay, it's not going to work out every time. Like if I don't choose the right course of treatment, but you have this desire just to do the best for your child. So you have to give yourself credit. So some of the things and tips that I have learned is to lean on other people. So
Mm.
it sounds like I did all this myself. I did not. And I'm going to repeat this twice because I think it's really important. But there is not a village, there is an army of people out there to help you. So I said family, caregivers, school and the education system, social programs at school and in the healthcare system, your friends, your partner, your church, your therapist, your parents, your neighbors, your children, your boss, your colleagues. I probably won't repeat them again. It's just the list is infinite. And so I've even had my own executive coach. So in my career, my company got me an executive coach. And I want to tell you this story because this is not even the role of the coach, but this is what he did for me. And this was, I would say, about 10 years ago. So part of me being an executive of this company was to get an executive coach. And of course, I told him about my children's medical challenge. He told me about this foundation that offered grants, and my son he was approaching 9 or 10, and I couldn't lift him anymore. So we had what's called a Hoyer lift, but it's very bulky. And so he told me about this grant, and I applied for this grant, and I got a huge amount of money, and my husband bought this electronic lift. Okay, and he mounted it to the ceiling and this whole thing. And this is my executive coach. This is, hey, I know this company that offers this
Wow.
grant. I think you should apply. So I wrote him a thank you note and everything. And then about 6 months ago, I had to hire him again. I needed some help with something. And I told him that I went and looked at my coaching notes from 10 years ago. You got him out because he was my coach then. And I had written like that recommendation that he had. And I sent him a text on a Friday afternoon. I said, hey, David, his name is David. I said, look, remember when you told me like 10 years ago about this foundation? And I said, I know I wrote you a thank you note, but I just want to let you know that we use that lift still today. And he's
Wow.
like, Metha, the fact that you sent that to me on a Friday afternoon, he said it just made my day. So my point in that whole story is I would have never thought that my executive coach that my company hired for me would have been offered, financially, that was something that was really helpful. So what I have to say about leaning on other people is really two categories. And there is there are times where people think you're Wonder Woman. And that what I mean by that is they would never offer you help because they think you have everything under control.
Mm-hmm.
And so you look like you can manage everything. And so they wouldn't, think to offer you help. So it's really important to ask for help. Okay. I mean, you just have to ask for help. So they would say, oh, you're great. she doesn't need anything. So I'm going to give you an example. So this vacation that we just took, we took a driving vacation, and my husband and I have never taken more than a week away from my son because it's just very hard to plan caregivers. And my husband was telling me all these reasons why we couldn't take this 12-day vacation, but we've had a real tough time keeping caregivers because of the pandemic, and all of these scenarios. And I said, I'm going to make it happen. So I was calling everybody, like my other children, his family. I had backup plans on backup plans. And I told them, I want to take this vacation. And so that's where I was very direct and asking for help. And then I'll take a break, but after this, and I tell you another example is when you don't ask for help. So people will see that you're struggling. So there are times in your life when you know you don't have it under control. You're crying or you're stressed out.
Yeah.
And the issue is that people don't know how to help. So they see your circumstances and they see that you are struggling, but they don't know how to help. So you have to really empower them to help you. I'm going to give you an example. So when my son was born, he was hospitalized for 10 weeks. He didn't come home. And when we brought him home, it was so overwhelming. Okay, he was on 8 medicines, some of them 3 and 4 times a day. We had to have like massive training by the nurses to bring him home. And so, and I had 2 other children, 5 and 7 years old.
Wow.
And so my work gave me a leave of absence, so that wasn't an issue. But they wanted to know how they could help. And I'm thinking, well, there's just absolutely no way anybody from work could help. They put together a weekly food program where they dropped off food for once a week, every Wednesday night for 3 months. And it would usually last 2 or 3 days. I mean, financially, it was a help, but it was more of a help in that I had 2 other kids that needed food on the table. I barely got to eat a sandwich during the day. So that is a way that people wanted to help, but they really don't know how. And so you have to empower them. So that is one of the tips that I have.
That's first of all, it's great that I've heard that a food train, I think, is that what it's called? Yeah, food train.
Yes.
I've participated in those, like when someone's had like a baby. And it's meal prep is a project in itself. So, and I'm sure figuring out what to make your family was the last thing on your mind in that moment. And I think that's just a great thing to share in general for someone who's watching and there's somebody who's, struggling with something, but they don't know how to help. Just by bringing someone meals or picking up groceries or picking up their dry cleaning or doing their laundry, just taking something off their plate, that in itself, no matter what someone's situation is, if someone's really struggling with something or dealing with a very overwhelming circumstance, just having someone step up and offer a meal or whatever. It's something simple, but it can make such a difference because you got to eat, the kids have to eat, and who has time to make a meal when you have all of that stuff happening all at once. So those are some really important tips. There's something else I was going to say, and I can't. The one thing I wanted to add is another great. I'm guessing there's probably groups on here. I don't know. Have you heard of Meetup.com where they have like different groups? It's big in some of the cities have it. I don't know if it's in all the cities.
Okay.
It's great for when, especially if you don't know, if you live in an area where you don't have a lot of support.
Okay.
Yeah, meetup.com. They have groups for it. It's not like dating. I mean, there are dating groups on there, but it's like hobbies. There's like mom groups. I'm guessing there's probably a special needs groups on there. Probably there's
Yeah.
there's groups for everything. So I just wanted to throw that out there that if you're someone who wants to connect with other people to like talk about some a challenging situation, like I know New York City has like a divorce meetup group.
Okay.
So there's like a lot of different, there's like single parent groups. So if you're someone who doesn't know a lot of people or have a lot of local support, meetup might be a good way to like also like connect with other people going through a similar circumstance. So this way, because you don't want to feel alone when you're with when you're with a group of people who are in a similar circumstance. It's helpful, even if you just need to call and vent about something. Just that person.
That's a great recommendation. I didn't know about that group, so that's really good. I'm
Yeah,
gonna look
it's a
into it. Yeah.
website. If you go to meetup.com and you can just look up what meetups are available in different cities. I think it's anybody can create a meetup.
Okay.
It costs, I think it's like it used to be, because I briefly had like a coaching meetup a long time ago. At the time, I think it was like $20 a month. If you're
Okay.
someone who's an organizer for something. So yeah, if there's a group that you don't see and you want to create, you can always create your own group also. And
Oh, that's great. Yes.
so yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, we're learning all the time. That's the great thing about these interviews and meeting new people.
Exactly. Were there any other tips that you would like to share?
Yeah, the other tip I wanted to share was to seek advice and don't hide the condition. And my story about that is that, you just talked about meetup. You have, this your work. I'm going to use a work example. You have people that really need to know your situation, and they can help you out as well. And so it's really important to proactively share your situation so that things, you're given grace, but also when the crisis has happened. So I'm going to tell you this story. So my daughter was having a crisis that I needed 100% of my attention. And I was working remotely, and I thought I could work remotely and handle her situation. But my CEO called me in the middle of the day and needed something. And it was on this project that I was working, and it was really important. And I just said, I cannot do this now. I'm having a total crisis with my daughter. I need 100% focus. I cannot focus on work. I need a week. I might need more, but I need everybody to jump in and pull it off my plate. And he said, absolutely. Now, that can't always happen if you don't already have stuff set up at work. But my team that worked for me knew of my daughter and my son's condition. So when I was able to communicate that with him, he was able to just go to them and tell them, get it done. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like they were already prepared because they knew about my condition. So it's really important not to suffer in silence. And some people say, oh, I don't want to tell my employer that, I have this condition or my child has this condition. But it's amazing what people will do to rally to help you. So make sure you share.
Yeah, and I think too is it's important for them to know, because in the event something urgent happens, they understand, oh, this isn't someone who's just calling out randomly or dropping the ball. Like, they understand the context. And there's also laws that protect people with certain situations. So it's better to tell up front than down the line, because then it could be worse later on, where it's like, well, why didn't you say something sooner? So because I think it also shows that you're being honest and upfront in the beginning. And I can't speak for all employers. Every place is different, and some places can be hostile work environments, but overall, in a general sense, I think a lot of employers value honesty and than being kept in the dark until, all of a sudden you can't keep it in the dark anymore.
Yeah. So I think that's true. And I worked in HR for many years too. And I've seen both sides of where employees don't want to share and employees that come up front with it. But, you know, most of the time organizations are very good and want to support you. So, they really do. People want to help. So it's just better if you can come forward with it.
Yeah, and I think also, I remember that was the other thing I was going to mention is sometimes it's very hard to ask for help. That's something I struggled with for a long time. Like you want help from others, but you're afraid to ask for help and you feel bad accepting help. But it's so important to ask for that help because what you're saying, why suffer in silence? Why wait till you reach your breaking point? Like I have a very high threshold for stress.
Good.
And so I could just tolerate things for a really long time. And then, once in a while, you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I can't get out of bed. All of a sudden, everything just kind of like implodes on you. And I've reached a point where now I've put in place a little more. And sometimes, sometimes I do just kind of keep going. But I know when I start hitting a threshold, and instead of waiting until I get to that like emotional breaking point, it's okay, I need to step back. Where do I need help? What do I need to do? What can my husband take care of that, or whoever else, or, sometimes there's tasks that you try to cram in that, maybe it's not so important that I do this. Maybe, maybe decluttering certain parts of the house that I've been meaning to get to as much as I want to, maybe that's not a priority right now as some of these other things that I have going on.
Yeah.
And being realistic with that and kind to yourself in the process.
Yeah, I mean, and that it's something that, like I said, you can't. I don't believe in balance, and that you have to make choices. You just ultimately.
I think that's, I think a lot of us struggle with balance. Like we want this proverbial balance, but I don't think anyone really has it. It's kind of just managing. You find a way to manage and navigate things, but it's true. Nothing is ever that perfect balance.
They're all in the balls, as I say, are not in the air at the same time.
Right.
It's just not the case.
Yeah, I like what you said. It's about choices. And sometimes you have to set some of those balls down and throw them in a corner, and you look at them another time.
Yes.
Well, Metha, this has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate you coming on today to share your personal story, your wisdom. And this has been great. And I hope everyone has been getting a lot of value from this as well. Before we wrap up, what are some resources that you would like to recommend?
Well, there's a couple. You already mentioned one, and that is parent groups. Okay, so parent groups can exist like with meetup.com, but also Facebook groups. Like my daughter has a very specific condition. There's actually a Facebook group for that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Also, local non-for-profits, like they're, whether it's Easter seals or cerebral palsy or something like that, or that are in your community. Also, ask your doctor and your social worker. Okay. The social worker is like, if they don't offer you a social worker, you ask for a social worker because that is their job. So ask the social worker. Through school. There is so many programs through the school and so much funding, but you have to ask for it. So you have to really go to the school, the counselor, who's ever in charge of special needs programs, and you have to keep asking. But the school has a lot of programs and you need to ask. And then you research the social programs in your state. They do vary by state, but you can type in Google the medical condition and children's social programs, and there's a lot of programs through the state. Also, you can pay for resources. So for example, we're applying for guardianship for my son. And, but I used that local group that I told you about, that non-for-profit, and they made a recommendation for me on an attorney that's all they do. Because I can call an attorney and they'll be like, oh, I've never filed for guardianship for. Or you can go through that and get a recommendation, and I pick up the phone and they okay, they can send me, okay, so here's the 5 steps. We're on step 1. Turn this form in, so that was helpful.
Mhm.
Then I asked somebody else on, I can apply for Social Security disability for my son, or I can hire somebody to do it for me. And I called one person and they're like, oh, we have a branch in our company and that's what they do.
Oh,
One
wow.
call, sent me a form, that's it. So, it's really, and I am glad to send this list to you, or we can put it in the chat, and people can reach out to me and I will go over this with you, because I did not learn this overnight.
That's a really great offer. Yeah, that'd be great if I could put the list in the notes below this video.
Okay.
And yeah, if anyone is struggling with something like this, and you can sit down with them and help them come up with a plan, because that's the thing. There's a lot of stuff happening at once, I can imagine, and sometimes there's multiple fires you have to put out, and to have a plan in place, it sounds like that's what's helped you navigate all of that, is connecting with people, and look, even your coach. Who would think that your coach would know something that would be, you never know if somebody knows somebody. Somebody could know someone could have a family member, a friend who could have a connection for you that could help you with that next step in the process. So yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. And what's the best way for people to connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn under Metha Vasquez, and I can give you the notes and the link on that. And I'm on Facebook. My company's name is Meet the Peak. And I'm on Facebook as well. And I will send that information so you have it in the notes, and and I'll put my email in there too. You can get a hold of me any of those ways.
Fantastic. I'll put all of that in the notes below. Well, Metha, this was such a pleasure chatting with you. I love your energy. You're such an inspiration. And I want to thank all of you who tuned in and watched. Thanks again for coming, and thank you all for tuning in. Take care.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.